everyone, and welcome to our podcast where we discuss everything your inner nerd loves. This is the Nerds Awaken. Today we will be discussing DC's upcoming movie, Suicide Squad, which comes out August 5th, 2016. I'm joined by my co-host, Grayson.
Hello, everybody.
And without further ado, let's kick it off.
First of all, we will be talking about what the Suicide Squad is in the comic books. In the DC comic books, the Suicide Squad is the name given to Task Force X, which is an elite team of supervillains working on behalf of the US government. Despite officially being in prison, the Suicide Squad members are allowed to carry out Black Ops missions in return for reduced sentences. The person behind this organization is Amanda Waller. For obvious reasons, the missions carried out by the Suicide Squad are usually highly dangerous. And due to their top-secret nature and the criminal status of the squad members, if one of the supervillains fails to return, it's a fair bet that no one is going to be kicking up much of a fuss or looking too closely at their death. And in some of the original comics, the squad members are also fitted with miniature bombs under the skin, which can be detonated if they try to escape or cause trouble during one of the assignments. And that is what the movie is going to be based on. It's a team of elite supervillains that are tasked to carry out Black Ops missions on behalf of the US government.
So, for the main cast of the movie, we have Jared Leto as the Joker, who we know he isn't going to be part of the Suicide Squad, but he will be appearing in the movie as a very prominent character. In the Suicide Squad, though, we have Will Smith starring as Deadshot, Margot Robbie starring as Harley Quinn, Cara Delevingne starring as Enchantress, Jai Courtney starring as Captain Boomerang, Adewale Agbaje starring as Killer Croc, Karen Fukuhara as Katana, Joel Kinnaman starring as Rick Flag, Jay Hernandez as Diablo, Adam Beach as Slipknot, and then Viola Davis as Amanda Waller, and she's the creator of the Suicide Squad.
Also appearing in the movie, we have Ben Affleck as Batman, Common as the Tattooed Man, Ike Barinholtz, who is reported to be playing one of the Joker's henchmen, Scott Eastwood, which there is no real confirmation on who he is playing. There's really just theories. Some speculate he's playing Agent Grayson, others say that he's playing a young Slade Wilson. We just have to wait and see.
So we're just going to be picking apart the trailer a little bit and making some speculations, some theories about what we think some of the stuff, means, or either like hints or Easter eggs we saw. So the first thing is, we don't know who the main bad guy is going to be, or the villain, or the threat, actually. We know that the Joker, Jared Leto's Joker, is going to pose some sort of minor obstacle, but he's not going to be the main villain. Our theory for who the main bad guy is going to be is the Tattooed Man, who's, like we said before, he's played by Common. There's a specific scene in the trailer where down in the subway station, it shows him for a split second, but there's someone like floating there, and like the train hits them, and then there's like this like weird like magic looking stuff flying around. And for those you don't know, the Tattooed Man in the comics, his abilities are to make his tattoos basically come to life, make them three-dimensional. Like he's a dragon tattoo that comes to life, so that could be like what's down in that subway in that scene, and he could be our main bad guy. Another theory about the main antagonist or the main villain is actually Enchantress. Like, she loses control and the Suicide Squad have to go after her to take her down. That would also connect with the train scene. Instead of it being, the Tattoo Man's tattoos or whatever, it could be her magic. We also see some scenes with like monsters in it and stuff, so they may be fighting like monsters that either she brings on or they're just like there in the city from someone else. But yeah, we're not sure yet.
Also, well, some things they will be showing us in the movie is Harley Quinn's origins. As we've seen in flashback scenes and leaked set images and trailers, we see Margot Robbie as Harleen Quinzel prior to her meeting the Joker. We do see in the trailer Joker holding Harley Quinn inside a tub of acid, which is in the comics how she came to be Harley Quinn. So possibly we are going to see that transition happen in the movie as well, either in flashback scenes or a short scene at the beginning of the movie. We're not sure yet. Next up, we are going to talk a bit about Amanda Waller, which is the head of the organization that is the Suicide Squad. For a fearsome villain, quote unquote villain, at least in terms of her attitude to the expendability of the squad, Amanda Waller isn't exactly the most fearsome looking character. In my opinion, that's precisely why she should be treated with fear and respect, because she has this control over a group of deadly supervillains with who knows how many kills under their respective belts. And as we've seen in the trailer, also she is a few feet away from Deadshot when he's holding this massive rifle in his hand. We all know what Deadshot can do, and I'm pretty sure Amanda Waller knows what Deadshot can do as well. So that shows that she doesn't fear the Suicide Squad because she controls them, and that's what makes her such an intricate character.
So we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the main characters and their backstories from the comics and what we've seen of them in the trailers and whatnot. We'll be excluding ones like the Joker and Harley Quinn because they're very popular characters.
Let's start off with Deadshot. In the comics, Deadshot is one of the world's greatest assassins. He's known for his expert marksmanship and near-perfect track record. And also in the comics, he is one of the core members of the Suicide Squad and even served as its leader on field on several occasions. In the comics, Deadshot was first sent to Bel Rev by Batman after Batman interrupted an attempted hit on a senator. And after being sent to Bel Rev, Deadshot was later invited to join the Suicide Squad.
So far what we've seen of the character in the trailers and whatnot, he's going to stay pretty accurate to the comics. Obviously the fact that he is not white is the only prominent difference, but that really doesn't matter. Obviously, he uses guns just as much. His costume is fairly similar, and he was a bad guy put in jail by Batman.
George Digger Harkness was born and raised in rural Australia with his mother and stepfather. When he was in his teens, his mother sent him to Central City so he could find his real father, who was the owner of a very successful toy manufacturing company. After Harkness auditioned to be the spokesman for his father's new toy line, he eventually developed the identity of Captain Boomerang, which he planned on keeping to live a straight life, but he eventually derailed and turned to a life of crime. He was eventually sent to prison by Batman and was eventually recruited by Amanda Waller to join the Suicide Squad.
From what we've seen in the trailers and whatnot, Captain Boomerang's character, all we know that is going to be the same. He's obviously going to use boomerangs. The character itself looks rather similar. We know he's going to have an Australian accent from what we heard him talking.
Moving on to Katana, she grew up in Japan where she honed her abilities in multiple martial arts, and she eventually was granted with the Soul Taker, which is the sword she carries that has the ability to collect the souls of whoever she kills. In the comics, she has no ties with the Suicide Squad.
The movie adaptation of her is, by all appearances, very similar to the comic. She has her mask, and her hair is like the same. She's wearing almost the same clothes, and her sword seems to be like, in one of the scenes, seems to be like glowing with like this like stuff around it, like obviously like collected a soul. And then her eyes at one point turn black and then like white. That's her probably accessing the power of the souls in the sword. So yeah, that's all the information we've collected on her so far.
Moving on to Killer Croc, aka Waylon Jones. In the comics, he was born with a genetic mutation that gave him a reptile skin and sharp claws and teeth due to genetic atavism. He went on to become a circus wrestler who would eventually rise to conquer the Gotham mob racket, and he went on to become one of Batman's most physically imposing enemies. And again, in the comics, Killer Croc has no ties with the Suicide Squad.
In the trailers, we see Killer Croc with his reptile-like skin, just like in the comics. He obviously has some sort of strength, and he has the sharp teeth and claws, which is very similar to the original character.
Next up, Enchantress. In the comics, June Moon was granted the ability to become this powerful sorceress that is the Enchantress after stumbling upon a room that held a demon named Zamor, and he granted her supernatural abilities. She would become the Enchantress by saying the word Enchantress, and if she said the same word again, she would revert back to June Moon.
Her movie adaptation seems to be different. We're not sure exactly yet. We know she can obviously, not necessarily, we don't know if she can control exactly when she changes from human to witch, but we know that she has that ability. Like we said before, maybe at some point she'll lose control in the movie and she'll become the villain, or that's the things we see are just her using her powers. We don't know yet.
Next up is El Diablo, which in the comics is a name that was used by several people. This iteration of El Diablo is named Chato Santana, which is the third person to take on the identity of El Diablo. Chato was an ex-criminal that was trying to clean up his act and seeking redemption for his past sins. And after he gained his abilities, he joined the Suicide Squad in hopes of seeking that redemption.
So far, we haven't seen much about El Diablo in the trailers. All we know is he has the same abilities, the same appearances.
Moving on to Slipknot, which is most likely the least prominent character in this cast. In the comics, Slipknot was a minor villain that developed a powerful chemical that allowed the ropes he used to become stronger than metal, and he used those ropes to pursue a life of crime and mainly fight against Firestorm. He was promptly put in custody by the government, and he was eventually enrolled to join the Suicide Squad.
All I can really say about Slipknot in the movie is that, well, nothing really. It shows him for about 2 seconds and he just punches a woman, and that's about all we know.
Moving on to Rick Flag. Now, we believe that Joel Kinnaman is most likely playing Rick Flag Jr., who in the comics was the only Flag to lead the Suicide Squad. In this new Suicide Squad that was formed by Amanda Waller to lead this new team to beat him into shape, much to his disdain, because he loaded working alongside former criminals and killers like Deadshot and refused being alike with them in any way whatsoever.
So far, from what we've seen about Rick Flag in the movie, he's going to be very similar to his comic book counterpart. He's going to, obviously he doesn't really enjoy his job working with the Suicide Squad. He has very great distaste for them by all appearances.
So what I'm hoping for is that Suicide Squad ends up leading to the appearances of many other prominent villains, like Bronze Tiger, Deathstroke, King Shark, Black Spider, and even villains like General Wade Eiling or Plastique. I think that this movie is a great opportunity to introduce so many new characters that could use the spotlight.
So there's a few questions these trailers leave us asking about this movie.
Who is the main villain?
Will we see the appearance of either Jason Todd or Dick Grayson?
Does this movie leave room for future sequels?
Why did Slipknot punch that woman in the face?
And will he even be of any use?
Will he die in the first 10 minutes of this movie?
Why did they even put him in the movie to begin with? Thank you so much for listening, guys. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
And don't forget to tune in next week where we will be talking about and reviewing Deadpool. Alright guys, see you next week.
Bye.
Seriously, the hell's wrong with you people?
We're bad guys. It's what we do.